Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm parent coach, mother of four, and your host, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where you will learn that even for parenting experts like me, there is no such thing as a perfect parent, and that fabulous behavior and amazing relationships are right on the other side of that realization. If you're working your butt off to do right by your kid, honor yourself, and go beyond the BS around you, you are my person, and this podcast is for you. Full disclosure, I'm a sometimes potty talker, and we deal with the challenge of raising kids here. This podcast is for grown-ups, so stick your earbuds in and let's do this. Welcome into another episode of the podcast, listeners. I'm excited to see you again today, or speak to you, I should say. The one thing I can't do is see you. You might be able to see me if you're watching the video, or hear me, obviously, no matter whether you're watching the video or listening in your car or whatever. But the one thing that can't happen is that I can't see you. So it's of all the things I could have said, the least logical. But here we are anyway. Welcome into the episode. And if you are watching the video, you can tell that I'm in a different space than I normally am, which is really just next door to my normal space. I'm in my husband's office instead of my office. So he's out of town and I like his office better than mine. So I'm cozying up and recording a few episodes in here. Ha ha ha. He can't stop me. Oh, man. So today's episode, I think, is a really great dovetail with, there's a couple of episodes that I'm recording kind of close together with each other, but you're going to be hearing them, spaced out, obviously. And those episodes are the one that I did on polarity a few weeks ago, the one that I did last week on impossible situations. Today's episode is going to be on this zone of power idea. And in a month, and that's just, I'll explain why it's going to be a month from now. But in a month, you're going to get what I consider the fourth episode in this series, which is on the pithy title that I have for it anyway, is the lesson we never learn, or we're never done learning, but probably just to make it clickbaitier, and I'll probably just say the one lesson we never learn or something like that. So these four episodes that I just outlined for you, in my opinion, they go together really, really well. They obviously can stand alone, and that's wonderful too. But in general, I think that all four of them really feed into each other, and especially last week's and this week. So last week I talk about impossible situations, and I'll bring that back home for us today, a little bit of a tiny refresher. But if you buy into this idea of like being allowed to put things into this impossible situations bucket, or the fuck it bucket, as I called it, if you remember that, then the question becomes, okay, if I'm in an impossible situation, now what? And that's what today's episode is about. And I just realized, like literally as I was talking, that I think the expression fuck it bucket, I learned, it was like hidden in like the recesses of my subconscious from a book that I read like when I was in my 20s, by David Sedaris, called I think it's from this book, Me Talk Pretty One Day. And he talks about his brother, and his brother likes to like put a bunch of candy in a bucket and like just veg out all weekend and eat candy, and he calls it his fuck it bucket. So just credit where credit's due. That literally just came back into my consciousness while I was talking just now. So there you go. And highly recommend that book and David Sedaris in general. Not that that's a hot take. I'm sure probably half of you have already, or all of you that are listening have already read one of his books, but not self-help stuff at all. He's just a really funny writer. But anyway, back to the matter at hand, your zone of power. What do we do when we figure out that we are in an impossible situation? And my confession for you this week is that I'm not a very good driver. So you're going to see why I chose this as my confession. I wasn't just randomly thinking of like, what are things about me that I haven't confessed to yet? One time I spilled my milk on the kitchen counter. That's a confession I could make. No. The reason why I chose this will reveal itself to you. But my confession for you this week is that I am not a very good driver. And I'm going to go even further in that confession and say, when I was younger and hadn't done a lot of self work and also just was very immature, I was really defensive about that. Like if people would call me out on missing a turn or getting distracted or um whatever, or there would be like this moment where it's like who's going to drive, and Mike would make sure it was him and not me. He always prefers to be the driver, and you can tell that he's like kind of on edge when I'm driving. I used to get so defensive about that, and if I would miss a turn or something like that, I would just, get really angry, right? Because I didn't want to admit that I wasn't very good and all of that stuff. And would just get really angry and shut up. I know what I'm doing. It's not my fault or whatever. All the stupid things we say when we make a mistake, but we don't want to own it. So that is true about me. It's true that I'm not the world's best driver. And it's true that I used to be a little bit of a jerk about it. And there's a lot of reasons why I'm not a good driver. I have really bad eyesight. I mean, obviously, I'm not a dangerous driver or anything like that, and I wouldn't have a driver's license if it weren't safe for me to drive. But um, if you ever watch the video, you see that I wear ginormous glasses that make my eyeballs look like giant planets. This is after I've had surgery on my eyes. I wear these glasses. I wear bifocals when I'm not sitting at my computer. I really don't have great vision. I don't have good night vision, and I don't have good peripheral vision, and I don't have good depth perception. So, because of that, I have to be really locked in when I'm driving. I don't like driving at night. I will, because I'm being very cautious, I don't drive super fast. I'm not like driving 30 miles per hour in the highway or anything like that, but I am just, not super aggressive. I probably stay in the right lane behind a truck a lot longer than I should, and I should just pass them or something like that. And and because of all that, I often do miss my turn because I'm, paying attention to more like safety things on the road and stuff like that. So anyway, that's who I am as a driver. I hope you can still love me. And maybe you love me even more because most bad drivers never even admit that they're bad drivers. But I'm a bad driver. I'm saying it right here. It's being recorded. And my kids will love it if they ever find out. If they ever deign to listen to one episode of this podcast, which will never happen, they will hear that I have publicly and on the record confessed to being a bad driver. So there you go. That's their punishment for never listening to my podcast, is never getting that satisfaction, because I'm not going to tell them. So, um, so that is my confession for you today. Why is that my confession for you? Well, let's reconnect to that idea of impossible situations. And if you cast your memory back a few more episodes, you'll remember I talked about polarities. So polarity or polarizations in a psychological sense is when we are sort of activated or parts led, to use IFS language. We're being led by our protective patterns and things like that, enough that even though we live in a world of infinite possibility, all we see is two terrible choices, and they're usually the opposite of each other, right? So one side of us is saying, when we're angry, one side of us is saying, well, I just have to carry it around with me and just be angry, because if I yell about it or whatever, I'm going to make a scene. I might ruin a friendship. I'm going to make an ass of myself. So what can I do? I just have to hold it inside. And then the other side of you is saying the opposite thing, which is like, I'm so pissed. I want to just totally eviscerate this person and let them have it and tell them exactly what's up and all of that stuff. And those two sides of us, or those two parts, to use IFS language, um, are both just kind of like locked in this like tense, tug of war between each other. And but let's face it, both of those options are terrible. Walk around feeling resentful all the time, or lose my temper and make a scene and feel ashamed of myself afterwards. Like, bleh, I can't, there's no good choice here, right? That's what a polarity is. And when we're in when we're in this like polarized situation where the world is black and white, it's either or, it's choice A or choice B, and both of them are shitty. that's a really good sign that we are not being led by self energy. We're being led by these little parts of our personality that have taken over. And this, like I said, world of infinite possibility has now gotten boiled down to two terrible options. And that's the only thing that exists in this world. There's no third choice, let alone choices 3 through infinity. So that's that polarity piece. And then let's connect with this impossible situations piece. What's an impossible situation? It's that situation that you find yourself in where you desperately wish this circumstance were different, but it's out of your hands and you can't change it. So I'm a bad driver, and I trust me, I have done all the things that you can possibly do to change my vision. This is as good as it's going to get. And for that, and maybe some other reasons too about my nervous system or whatever, I'm not going to ever be a good driver. So that's an impossible situation for me. Like, I have to drive in this world. And any older person can tell you, once driving ceases to be an option for you, at least in our society, your life gets really challenging and untenable and small. And so I'm driving in a world that necessitates my driving, and I can't get any better at driving. This is it. This is how it's my impossible situation. We're in way more, interesting psychologically impossible situations all the time. Like, there's someone in your life who's just really challenging to you, and they're not doing any work to improve themselves. Most of the time, for us, that happens to be as adults. Our parents often are examples of that. It's like, listen, this is the way my mom is, or my dad is, or whatever, and they're not going to change. This is it. So I'm in an impossible situation. Like, in a perfect world, my mom would be working on herself and I would be working on myself. And eventually we would have this like amazing, healed, healthy attachment, parent-child relationship. That ain't never happening for a lot of us. And that's just what it is. So now I'm in this impossible situation. And you can see now where the polarity thing comes together, because, oh, okay, let's continue this analogy with the parent thing, right? Okay, it's Christmas. What are my choices? Go home and be around my crazy parents and lose my ever loving mind, or cut my parents out of my life and not spend Christmas with them. Seems like there's two terrible options. I hate both of them, and it's impossible. It's impossible. There's no world in which I go home for Christmas and my parents act different than they have my entire life. They're the same people. They ain't changing. It's impossible. And there's nothing I can do or say that will get through to them. There's nothing that I can do or say that will help them understand where I'm coming from. There's nothing I can do or say that will change them. I'm stuck. So you can see how these two ideas, they kind of like flow back and forth between each other. Our brains get to the I'm stuck point. They come up with two stupid solutions that are both painful, and then try to come up with a third, but they can't. And so we are back to the impossibility feeling, and we go back and forth between impossibility, painful solution, impossibility, painful solution. Now we get to talk about the topic for today. What do we do? So now what? What is the alternative way? And this comes up constantly in my job. And it doesn't matter if I'm working with people on parent coaching, career coaching, business coaching, life coaching, whatever it is. This kind of backed ourselves in a corner, only bad options situation comes up all the time. And I actually wrote down a few examples when I was planning for today's session. I got my coaching lingo going, obviously. For today's podcast episode, I organized, myself a little bit, and I thought of a few examples of impossible situations that my clients present to me. And sometimes they hook me in, and it's only halfway through our session where I'm like, wait a minute, why am I engaging you in this conversation? We are talking about something that's impossible. So some of these are, how can I talk to my ex to get him to lessen how many extracurriculars my kid keeps getting signed up for? This is actually one that I was chatting with a client about yesterday. She's a much more like, let the kid decide. It's important to have downtime and some unstructured time for this kid to be bored and come up with his own creative solutions to that. That's her philosophy. But her ex is like, go, 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 loves to have a packed schedule, signs this kiddo up for like basketball and hockey and this and that and blah, 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 blah. And it feels like too much to my client. And she's like, what should I do? Like, how she comes to me a lot with telling me what's going on with her ex. Everything she tells me that's going on with her ex is stuff that's basically just differences of parenting philosophy. There's no strong right or wrong. And then none of the things that the other parent is doing are actionable things. They're not things that are like wrong or dangerous or against the law or anything. They're just things that she doesn't agree with. And, you know, I'll be honest, most of the time I agree with her. Like if it were my kid, I probably wouldn't do it the way that her ex is doing it either. But there's nothing we can do about it. It's an impossible situation. What can you do to get your ex to sign your kid up for less extracurriculars? Nothing. There's nothing you can do to change that. He's going to keep doing that. It's an impossible situation. Or here's another example. I have a lot of times when I work with parents or adults, doesn't have to be a parent and it doesn't have to be about parenting. When I work with neurodivergent adults, they have spent their whole life feeling like the world is not made for the way that they navigate the world. It's just that their way of being in the world doesn't work with the way that the world is set up. It's very frustrating. And especially because they're adults, that means that they were children at a time when we had much less information and supports and understanding about how neurodivergence works, which I would argue are still in our infancy of now, but it's way better than when my adult clients were children. So they spent their whole lives not only feeling this way, but being told essentially, like, you need to get better at managing your time, or you need to get better at organizing yourself, or you need to get better at socializing. You need to be the way that the world wants you to be. There's something the matter with you. And so when I work with clients who have been receiving this message their whole lives, a lot of times when they start working with me, they come to sessions asking me to help them become more organized, get better at managing their time, be better at socializing. And now, are there things that all humans can learn to improve those things and enhance our skill set? Absolutely. But is a person with really strong ADHD ever going to be like the amazing, magical calendar wizard? Probably not. And that's just the truth. Just like I'm never going, I did all the things I can do to be a good driver, as good as I can be. And I am never going to be a Formula One race car driver. I'm not ever going to be even a person who likes driving at night. So that's just true about me. I'm not a good driver and I never will be. And, there are things like that about our personalities that we have a really hard time, giving up the fight to be different than who we are, whether we're neurodivergent or not. So that's another impossible situation that comes up a lot in coaching is make me different than who I am. Basically, is the question, is the request from my clients. Or I had a mom a couple weeks ago come to the group call and say that her daughter is just like really touchy, like meaning she's like kind of sensitive and when things don't go the way she wants, she kind of quote unquote overreacts, and she wanted me to help her figure out how to get her to stop that. I even asked her, like, what's your goal for today's session? And her answer was, how can I get her to cut that out? That was what she wanted. And I really hope that you listen to the fourth and final episode in this 4-part series that's coming a month from now. And I promised you I'd tell you why it's coming a month from now, and I will. Because that kind of thing about like, how can I get this other person to blah, 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 blah is you're going to see that's a really important topic that we're going to talk about in the next episode. So great examples of impossible situations, right? We just can't. We can't change other people. We can't change ourselves in terms of like changing our essential nature. We can't, and we can't fix the world, really. And so all these impossible situations get get us backed into those corners and stuff like that. So, okay, I can't make myself a type A person when I'm not a type A person. So now what? I can't get my ex to cut out scheduling my kid for way too many extracurriculars. So now what? I can't be a good driver. So now what? Right? What do we do about that? Well, I can tell you, like I said before, that when I was younger, what did I do about being a bad driver? I just, jumped down everyone's throat every time they'd say anything, even if it was just like, oh, you missed your turn. Or if I would like take a turn and I'd see someone like holding the handle of, the car door handle or something. What do you think I'm a bad driver? It's like, I'm like, yes, obviously they do. Why would you ask that question? You're just bringing it on top of to yourself. So anyway, so what do we do in these situations? Like obviously when I had kids was really when I was like, okay, I need to figure this out because I could tell when I was younger and I had kids that I would overreact, or what I considered for myself to be an overreaction, when I would make a mistake in driving or when someone would call me out on my driving. I would yell at people. I would like mess with my phone while I was driving, and it was just like this really intense, dysregulated situation where my kids were literally, not just metaphorically, a helpless passenger in this like super intense, dysregulated situation. And, I was very, very committed from early on in my parenting not to behave that way around my children because of my own experiences and stuff like that. And so I really had to like figure out, okay, well, if that's my one option is to just be pissed all the time and yelling and, putting my kids through a really unpleasant situation. I don't want to choose that. And I had to figure out something else. And this is where, and the reason why I call this episode, What is Your Zone of Power? Because when you're sitting there going, well, I can't do this, but I can't do that, and I can't do this, and I can't do that, and it's impossible. The next question is, well, what can you do? And my suggestion for you is that the first thing that we can do is accept the situation. 99% of the time, why we're in this impossible situation or why the situation feels impossible or why the situation feels like you have two terrible choices. And actually I want to pause there for a second. The situation is impossible. You're not just telling yourself that. I mean, there certainly are situations where we're telling ourselves something's impossible, but the situation is truly impossible in the sense that the thing you want to make happen, it's not possible to happen. I can't make myself a good driver. I can't make my mom do therapy. I can't, those things are not possible. And so the way that I'm looking at that situation, it truly is impossible. I'm not just telling myself it's impossible. It really is impossible. So the concept of an impossible situation, that's a real thing. It's not just a lie we're telling ourselves. The polarity is a story that we're telling ourselves. It's never true that there are only two choices. So that's a distinction between these things that can sort of like blend together. Maybe it's not an important distinction for you, but for me, from a coaching standpoint, it's important. And so I want to share that with you. Now, what makes an impossible situation cease to feel impossible is when you start looking at different goals. So, okay, I'm giving up this goal of trying to get my mom to do therapy. That's impossible. But I now have a new goal, which is how I feel about that or what's going on in my nervous system when I'm around my mom. That's all in my power, right? Once we start looking at ourselves, now we have infinite power. When we're looking at everyone else, when we're looking at the world around us, it's impossible. And it really is. And I really want you to hear that for me. If a situation feels impossible, you're probably right. And if you kind of turn your pivot a little bit to what you're looking at accomplishing, it ceases to be impossible. So the first thing that we need to do in an impossible situation is accept it for its impossibility. I accept the fact that this is the best kind of driver that I will ever be. I'm not going to be a better driver than who I am right now. I'm in acceptance of it instead of arguing with reality. I'm not attached to being something I'm not. or to things going the way that they won't. And once we have that little piece of acceptance, the answer to that, now the next answer to that question, well, what can I do? Where does my power lie? My power lies with me. The answer to the question, where does my power lie, is always with me. Not with me changing others, not with me changing the situation, not with me controlling the universe or changing reality, with me changing me. It's me, me, me. So now the next piece in that puzzle becomes, I've gotten the acceptance piece. I've refocused my energy or my attention on myself, where my true power lies. Then the last piece in that puzzle is what I call right action. And you don't actually, for first of all, if you haven't done those first two steps, don't even try to figure out what your action is, because all you're going to see is, once again, through the veil of your own dysregulation and myopic focus. So before you can even get to we all want to get to the end where it's like, okay, so what am I going to do? What am I going to do about Christmas? What am I going to do about the extracurriculars? What am I going to do about the driving? You have to get to a place where you trust, like, I will know the answer to that. Like, I will figure that out after I do this acceptance and refocus piece. So once you are, in that different state of being, different conscious state of consciousness, awareness, acceptance, the next right step reveals itself to you. It emerges clearly for you. And often is usually the answers that we come up with are really about the boundaries that we can set, true actual boundaries, not the lies you tell yourself that boundaries are, which is really just you trying to tell people what to do. Go to bed is not a boundary. I read stories to kids who are in bed on time. That is a boundary. So it's something you can do. And you can enforce it, and you can take care of yourself. So, usually once we are in that more higher state of consciousness place, the answers that reveal themselves to us are often about setting actual real boundaries and enforcing them in ways that take care of us. And so your solution might be, I am going to go to Christmas, but I'm going to stay in a hotel because that gives me space to be on my own. And that's really important for me. And I'm going to take care of myself. And the boundary I can set with my family is, I'm happy to come to Christmas and stay in an Airbnb or whatever. For example. So this is the part where I hate giving examples of solutions, because if we haven't done this stuff, the first stuff first, every solution that I suggest, even though it's just a hypothetical idea, your system will have a yeah but to it. And this is why oftentimes in my sessions with my clients, I don't make any suggestions about, well, why don't you try this, or why don't you try that? It's absolutely useless if the client hasn't gotten to this more expansive way of thinking about their situation and feeling that sense of empowerment and agency. And then once my client does feel that expansive sense of the universe and feeling of empowerment and agency, they don't need my suggestion. They still will probably reject my suggestion because they're going to come up with something that's 10 times better. Like I'd say, oh, why don't you maybe think about staying in an Airbnb? And they'd be like, actually, my best friend from high school lives like a mile away from my parents, and I think I'm going to stay with her. And that would actually be so fun. And I'm like, great. Or they'll come up with something completely different, like, yeah, I think I'm going to go, but I'm just going to go for these 2 days. Oh, fabulous. Ideas I would have never have come up with, or if I would have, they're not coming from my client's agency. So the solution, it's not their own. So oftentimes people come to coaches expecting us to tell them the answers, and it's very rare. It does happen where I make suggestions. And when I'm not in a coaching place, but a teaching place, I teach lots of concepts and skills and things like that. But the actual specific examples or solutions are almost always rejected by a coaching client. And the reason why is either the client has not gotten to that place of expansive openness to consider all these myriad of options, or they have gotten there and now they're in the driver's seat again and they don't want a suggestion from me. So if I'm doing my job well as a coach, my clients answer all their own questions. Um, and it's actually quite beautiful and magical to just kind of be like this little catalyst and space holder for this really cool process to emerge. So once you've gotten to that place of, expansive possibility and a feeling of agency, now you get to go into that space of action or choice. And those choices reveal themselves to you. And I'll give you one example for my client, which was the one who was frustrated that her ex was having all of these extracurriculars. And she finally decided, after we did some work around, refocusing back on herself and getting her to this place of realizing that she's actually in control, what she is in control of and what she gets to decide about. And what she decided was to just send a, really assertive, but like healthy and emotionally intelligent message and short message to her ex, just saying, "Hey, I noticed that you're signing our kiddo up for a bunch of stuff. And I know that's like how you like to do stuff, and that's cool and everything. Just want to let you know that that's not really the vibe that I maintain when he's with me. And so here's the days that I will take him to stuff. And if he signed up for stuff outside of that time, he'll just have to miss it when he's with me. And that's a bummer." And that's it. That's what she decided to do. And if you are navigating a similar situation to this, you might be thinking exactly what my client had to work through, which is he's going to be so mad. He's going to send me all these messages and he's going to try to change my mind. And he's going to never give it up and blah, 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 blah. And then we had to work through, yeah, that could happen. Sure. And probably will happen. What do you want to do about that? Where's your zone of power there? What do you want to do when your ex is upset with you? How do you want to take care of yourself instead of, this situation is, I can't make him not be mad at me. I can't make him not, there's no way to say this to him or set this boundary where he's not going to be upset. Yeah, that's an impossible situation. And it feels impossible to you because it's something that you can't control. It's not where your focus is, quote unquote, supposed to be. What can you control? I can control how I take care of myself when someone's angry with me. I can control how I respond when someone's angry with me. I can control how much I engage with someone who is angry with me. That's all in your control. And someone else can be a tempest in a teapot over here. And that's, it's a bummer for everybody because that's a bunch of negative energy and stuff like that. But it's not, that's an impossible situation. We're not going to go there. So, I mean, you can imagine that these kinds of situations arise all of the time and a lot with people who are going through separation. It is such a challenging, trying time. And, for goodness sakes, of course, we have our eyes on how can I minimize the madness of this moment in my life and how can I try to make it so that my ex treats our kid the way that he should or she should or whatever. It makes perfect sense. It's just unfortunately it's a fruitless exercise because we can't. And so we have to just realize this is an impossible situation. Put it in that impossible situation bucket so that now we can engage with it as an impossible situation and follow these kind of like quote unquote steps of identify it as impossible, allow it to be impossible, shift the focus back onto ourselves, meaning I have the power to control and change and grow me, and then let the next step emerge for us. And the truth is, like, to take it back to my, driving example, like the world is our backseat driver. So, this ex, for example, is the perfect example of a backseat driver for this mom. Like, she's going to make her decisions about how she's driving her car. And that person in the back seat is going to be like, what? This, I totally disagree. Our kids should be doing all this stuff. Do you even know how to drive? You're a terrible driver. Oh my God, blah, 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 blah. You can't stop that from happening. And that person is never going to turn into the person who's like, you know what? Everyone gets mistakes sometimes. Everyone misses their turn. And I love how you're pulling over right now and staying calm. That you're never going to get that from the outside world. So you have to give it to yourself. And, that's just the way it is. So, what do I do now as a driver? I pull over. My kids hear me probably like, I don't know, once a week, be like, oops, I missed my turn. Oh, well, no worries. I'll just pull over up here and turn around. Or, oh, I lost track of my directions. I'm just going to go pull over here and look at my phone one more time. Or, you know, whatever. These kinds of things where my choices were never going to be a better driver, but I can definitely model for my kids how to be someone who's imperfect healthfully. They can always feel that they're emotionally safe in the car with me, and not just, and of course also physically safe. And they can know that no matter how twisted around or turned around I get, I'm not going to yell. I'm not going to lash out at them. I'm not going to yell at other drivers on the road or get defensive. And they hear me acknowledge my flaws. And in that way, this impossible situation has now become a beautiful blessing for them. I don't know if they would describe it that way. I'm sure they probably wouldn't, especially not my teenagers. But that's okay. They don't have to see it the way that I do. That would be another impossible situation if I was trying to get them to agree with me that me being a bad driver was like awesome for them. So I encourage you to think about where are areas in your life where you have been maybe like beating your head against the wall on something, or really just trying to affect change where it's not possible, and see if you can go through this sort of process. Can you put that situation into the impossible situation category? And once it's there, can you accept that? Can you acknowledge and accept this situation instead of being attached to something that is impossible, or being attached to something that's not real, or being attached to being somebody you're not or something you're not? Can you have that little acceptance piece? And then can you shift your focus and your perspective onto where does your power lie? What can you do? What is available to you? And see what emerges. You don't have to chase your answers. Your answers will reveal themselves to you when you have done the work to get all these things that are blocking their trajectory into your awareness. Once those blocks dissipate, those answers just come right into your consciousness. It's pretty magical to watch. It's one of the most beautiful parts of my job is sort of shepherding a client through the process of removing, you know, all those blocks or the blinders or the veil that's over their eyes or whatever, and then witnessing as the solution that's right for them just comes to them. It's so awesome, and such a beautiful process. So if that's intriguing to you, if you're feeling like I kind of want to see what answers will reveal themselves to me, like, oh my gosh, I've been struggling with this impossible situation for years, and I'm ready to look at it through new eyes. I'm ready to see what new trajectories come to me when I have those new perspectives. Like, that's what coaching is. And you should definitely be setting up that free consultation that you hear me mention every week on the podcast. Tell me what your impossible situation is, and let's see what we can come up with. Have a great week, everybody. I can't wait to talk to you again next time. Oh, I almost forgot. Why do you have to wait a whole other month to get the fourth of this kind of series? And just to refresh your memory, what that was, the first was the polarity episode, and then last week's episode that was on impossible situations. This episode on zone of power, and then the last one will be a month from now, and it's going to be on the lesson we never learn. Why do you have to wait a month for that last episode? Well, it's because between now and then I'm going to be doing an Enneagram mini retreat. I haven't done one since the summer. I've gotten so many requests from people here in Colorado asking me when am I going to do another one. And so I finally got my calendar out and set one up. It's going to be on April 26th, 2026, if you're listening to this in a replay or whatever. And I host that in my home here in Denver. It's just a beautiful kind of blend of relaxation and being hosted and held and in like a really cozy space, plus deep learning and transformation. It's so fun. If you are ready to kind of figure out your Enneagram stuff and you want to know what your type is, or you already know what your type is, but you want to learn more, if you just like hanging out with other people and having a delicious brunch and a mimosa and getting a gift basket and just being in this like kind of high vibe environment, you should definitely come. The first time that I held this event, I actually had people flying in from out of town to come to it, which I'm not telling you you have to do that, but if you wanted to, I wouldn't blame you. And it's such a great event. So between now and the time when I do that fourth episode in this series, I'm going to be talking about the Enneagram for the next couple of episodes, helping people get excited for this event and think about what they might want to get out of it. Talking about lots of stuff. And I have new ideas. I'm going to interview my eldest son, Elijah, who is now in school to become a psychologist and a social worker. So that will be really fun. And we get to kind of talk about, even though the two of us are the same Enneatype, how different we are, but how alike we are. I'm going to talk a little bit about one of the biggest barriers to people doing this work is the fear that they're going to get put in a box by learning their Enneatype and stuff like that. And I'll talk about that. Going to do a little refresher for all y'all if you don't remember about the Enneagram, or you might never have heard of it. You might be a new listener and not have listened to any of my other episodes on the Enneagram. We'll talk about that. So stay tuned all month long. It's going to be like just a really fun Enneagram rich month of episodes. And you should definitely come to the event. You should totally come. It's so awesome. You get teaching materials that you get to take home. You get to watch me nerd out. You get to see where I live. You get to have an amazing brunch, including gluten-free and dairy-free options if you need that. We've got mocktails and mimosas. And if it's a good weather, we like to just kind of expand and float out into the yard and take some time to just be in nature and the spring flowers and all of that great stuff. And I love hosting, you guys. This is why I do the big retreat in October every year. And I do all of it myself. Like I love to curate the gift baskets. I love to cook, like all of this stuff. So come and have a fabulous time with me on April 26th. And then tune back into the podcast to hear the fourth in this series of sort of consciousness and right action themed episodes. And in the meantime, you'll get to listen to lots of cool Enneagram stuff and meet my oldest son and all that stuff. I have another surprise that I'm working on, but I can't reveal it quite yet because it's not a sure thing yet. But anyway, you can learn more about and register for that event on my website, AnnKaplanParentCoach.com/living Enneagram. And if you are on my email list, you'll get information about that as well, all that great stuff. And of course, as always, you can always set up that consultation with me and see if you want to work with me in other ways as well. I'll talk to you again next week, everybody. I can't wait. Bye, everyone. The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/Kaplan call, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.